Welcome to the Mississippi Outdoors Podcast. I'm Matt Wyatt. Today, a whole lot of fishing with Larry Pugh, Deputy Director here at the Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks.
This episode of the Mississippi Outdoors Podcast is brought to you by the Foundation for Mississippi Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks.
Larry Pugh, Deputy Director, Mississippi Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks, an all-around good guy. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Matt. Glad to be here.
You agree with the all-around good guy
I'm
part?
not going to agree with that, and I'm sure there will be people that will disagree with that.
Yeah. But a background in fisheries. So let's start right there, Larry. Fisheries biologist, but surely there's a story before that got you to that point. How did this all start for you?
That's an interesting question, Matt. So I was actually co-oping during college at Waterways Experiment Station in Vicksburg, Mississippi, as a civil engineer, and loved what I was doing at Waterways. But I kept noticing in our lab there were government vehicles pulling boats, and they had like nets and I started asking around, and some of the folks were telling me who they were, and so I just went to their office, and I said, "Tell me about what y'all do." And so early on, Jack Kilgore, Eric Dibble, Jan Hoover, they took the time when I was in college to sit down and tell me, what they did in fisheries and working on the river and in the lakes. And I was like, y'all get paid to do this? Obviously I had an interest in the outdoors, grew up hunting and fishing, with my dad and granddad and great-granddad. And so they started telling me, and I'm like, well, how do I get in this field? And they said, well, there are degrees, at universities, Auburn, Mississippi State, Texas A&M. And so I started doing some background work, and I met with the undergraduate advisor at Mississippi State, and we started looking at what I'd have to take, and it put me a year behind. And I was already co-oping, so that was an extended plan. So I went straight into fisheries management and wildlife fisheries ecology. I loved it, fell in love with it, and never looked back. Went straight into a master's degree at Mississippi State, finished that, and went to work right after that.
And the rest is history, as they say.
Yep.
No, so for a kid growing up in Vicksburg, I'm picturing oxbows, Mississippi River, that type of fishing, which is a certain type of fishing you grew up doing.
Yes. Early on, my fondest memories are fishing for white perch or crappie.
Yeah.
White perch if you're in Vicksburg. So Eagle Lake, Chotard, some of the Louisiana lakes, and then of course, we fished the river. Yeah. Fished the Yazoo a bunch. So growing up, that was the kind of fishing that I grew up doing. And from a hunting standpoint, we were very, very passionate about hunting. So started out squirrel hunting, then transitioned, of course, into deer hunting, and then fell in love with duck hunting and duck hunted, all the way till I moved to Northeast Mississippi. So, that introduction to fishing early on, I think, piqued my interest and paved the way for me to do what I'm doing now.
While you're here, and Larry, it's like everybody you talk to who, as an adult or has had a life in the outdoors, enjoys the outdoors, fishes, it starts as a kid. Sure. Somebody introduced you to it when you were just a little guy. And so that's the same for you as is with everybody else, really. Yeah, that's where it starts, isn't it?
And that's, you're exactly right. Whether it's a grandparent, whether it's your dad, a mom, somebody took the time to introduce you to the outdoors and get you hooked on fishing or hunting. And I was fortunate, my parents, my dad and my grandparents all loved to hunt and fish. And so I was exposed to it at a very early age.
Yeah. So you live in North Mississippi, have for a while. Of course, there's really, in your job, fisheries biologist, then now deputy director, there's really none of our bodies of water that you're a stranger to. But I think of like Bay Springs, for example, big, deep, clear, man-made, as being totally different in terms of the type of fishing, the way you have to fish versus where you grew up fishing.
Oh yeah, funny story. So, was fortunate to get hired with the agency in 1998, And so I was working as a fisheries biologist in Northeast Mississippi. And of course, a lot of people disagree with me, and I can state my case. But if you like to fish, or if you love to fish like I do, there's no better place to live than Northeast Mississippi. Mm-hmm. I'm an hour and a half from over 30 lakes, and I can be fishing a 70-acre state lake, or I can be fishing a 35,000-acre flood control reservoir, or I can be fishing a 48,000 Tennessee River. So that's the fishing mecca for me. And growing up, shallow fishing, what we talked about earlier, white perch, bass, oxbows. So I get to Northeast Mississippi, and I meet a mutual friend of ours who really mentored me early in my career in terms of fishing. And I've had him on Mississippi Outdoors, Jim Long, Mr. Jim.
Oh, yeah.
Really took me under his wing and started teaching me so much about electronics and fishing offshore. And he used to get so frustrated with me because early on we would throw a marker buoy out. So this is pre-maps and avionics, and, we line things up still from the bank. And so he'd throw a marker buoy out, and I'd get hung in it. Because I had to throw at something. Growing up, I was pitching at
had to have a target.
Throwing at a cypress tree, fishing a pier at Eagle Lake. So he'd throw a marker buoy out, and I'd get hung up in it. And he'd get so frustrated. So he started throwing it on the other side of the boat, and to make me throw. This is where you're throwing. Don't throw at the marker buoy, because I'd get hung up in it. And you talking about just opening up another world for me in terms of learning to fish offshore. And trying to visualize what you're fishing was just, for 2 or 3 years there, just blew me away that you could catch fish in the middle of the lake. Mm-hmm. It just blew me away.
No target to cast to. Your target's underneath the water.
Yep.
And so for somebody that grew up on the Mississippi River, that's like fishing blind almost.
Yeah, that's the way I felt a lot of times, that I just felt like we were throwing into the middle of nowhere. And he'd make a cast, and then my bait would land 5 feet from him. I was, because I was going to make sure I was throwing where I needed to throw. Yeah. And it was a tremendous learning experience. And now, 25 years later, I struggle to beat the banks now. Mm-hmm. I'm not a target fisherman. I would rather be offshore, fishing deep. Yeah. And certain times of year that doesn't work well, but I just have a hard time going down the bank now.
Modern electronics helps too, doesn't it?
Jim and his nephew Ed Houston, another close friend of mine, we vividly remember when the Navionics maps came out, and it was interesting to see how our spots or our waypoints lined up on those maps, and they were so precise. And it really changed the offshore fishing game, because anybody could look at an avionics map and visually see what you're fishing. If you were fishing a ledge or a hump or a long point going out in the middle of the lake, you look at that electronics, that avionics map, and there was no secrets anymore. Zero. Yeah. None. And it changed the way we fish those reservoirs.
Mr. Long, I remember, and it might have been 20 years ago, I remember going to his shop at his house there and watching him, how he makes his own baits.
Sure.
Homemade lures, blade baits, spinner baits and stuff, and always paint jobs and everything. Was fascinated how precise he was with all that. Mm-hmm. So
I still use those Uncle Jim blade baits. And still have a lot of his big spinner baits. Mm-hmm. I'd never owned a 1 ounce spinner bait or 3/4 ounce or 1 1/4 ounce. What do we're throwing, spinner baits near cypress trees, 3/8 or a 1/2 ounce. 1/2 ounce was heavy.
Right.
And here I am throwing I'll never forget the first time I caught him with Jim at Pickwick on a big spinner bait. And, I'm talking 1 ounce on Pickwick, and it was unlike anything I'd ever seen. And not a lot of people were throwing them. Yeah. And right time of the year, right conditions, that big spinner bait would be on. It would be on, yeah.
You mentioned all the lakes, all the bodies of water there in Northeast Mississippi, big, small. I guess one of the smaller, compared to a place like, Pickwick, Tennessee River, Bay Springs, Lake Lamar Bruce in South Tennessee. And you showed me a picture just a little bit ago of, your daughter. You have two, but
Yeah.
your oldest daughter, and that's her personal best.
Oh, sure.
So that's a largemouth. You caught at Lamar Bruce that weighed what?
8 pounds, 2 ounces. And, it's so amazing. Number one, both of my daughters fished with me, thankfully. And, Lauren just one afternoon, I said, I'm going to Lamar Bruce, and it was a nice day, and she wanted to go, and the bite was pretty slow. And it's hard to, for my family, particularly my daughters and my wife, to realize that, those beautiful days are not really days you want to be fishing.
The bluebird days.
Yeah. So we were having a pretty slow day, and we were throwing, light tackle, shaky heads, just trying to catch a few fish, and her line started moving out toward the middle of the water, or the middle of the lake, and I looked back, and she's jerking, thinking she's hung. And I said, Lauren, you got a fish. And so she scotched her feet and starts reeling, and I said, get your rod up. And she pulled her rod up and starts reeling. Well, this fish comes up and jumps, and she goes into full panic mode and runs up to the front deck, wanting me to reel it in. I'm like, no.
She tried to give you the rod.
Oh, yeah, tried to give me the rod. No, this is your fish.
Yeah.
No dip net. I made her play the fish the entire time, and of course, it took a while. Once it got to the boat, it would, strip drag and go into the boat like a big fish does. And I was trying to keep the line off the side of the boat. And so anyway, a little while later, that fish came up right beside the boat, and I lipped it and weighed it and took photos. And she was so excited because certainly that's a big fish, number one. But for her to catch it with me was pretty special. It was pretty special.
No question. You say pretty special. I get the feeling you're understating it, though. I mean, as a dad.
Well, you've got a daughter. It's a moment I'll never forget. Now, I don't know about her. It might not have been a big deal to her, but I can remember my youngest daughter going with me on Father's Day. We always went to Bay Springs and fished, and she would hang there with me and cast all day because I think one reason they didn't always go with me is because, if it was a nice day, I was going for the day.
It'd be all day.
Yeah, we were packing food. And I might not go at daylight with them. I might let them sleep in a little while, but then we were going to stay most of the day, and they'll stay right there and hang with me. And even as recently as 3 years ago, my youngest daughter was fishing with me. Courtney, she was fishing with me at Bay Springs. And we caught some really nice fish. And she participated in the catching of the fish that day. So, those days are infrequent now, but, both of them have started adulting in other states.
They grow up, don't they?
Yeah. And for some reason now they want to start playing golf. So
do you play golf together with your daughters?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Thanksgiving. They were both home for Thanksgiving and Christmas, which very rarely happens. And they wanted to go play golf, both of them, And my wife has started playing. It's the Pugh foursome, and they enjoy it. Lauren, my daughters are so different. Courtney is the youngest. She doesn't care. She just wants to hit the driver.
Okay.
She wants to tee it up in the fairway and hit the driver.
Right.
Lauren is frustrated because she can't make the ball go straight, even though she's only played twice, and she thinks she ought to be able to hit the ball.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Lauren, I've been playing golf 30 years. Okay. It's going to take you more than 2 or 3 times to figure this game out.
It doesn't happen quickly.
It doesn't happen quickly.
So basically what you're telling me is she expects to be able to pick up the clubs and go over the short period of time, hit 4 holes in one.
Yeah.
And have a nice little trophy case of
Sure.
like you do in your office. That's what she thinks it should happen. It's like that, right?
I guess, and I've told my wife, I was like, y'all just don't understand, the time commitment for golf. And you and I've played together. You understand, you just don't walk out on a golf course and do that.
No.
And
it's a lot like fishing in that one day, you don't really change anything, but one day it can be great and the very next day it can be awful.
Yeah, you don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
And so I was hoping to take them crappie fishing at either at Thanksgiving, maybe to run over to Sardis, and Sardis Reservoir and do some crappie fishing. But they wanted to go play golf. And
How
so
about that?
we went to play golf.
Yeah.
And
more than one way to have a good time outdoors.
And that's what I didn't play much. I basically refereed and helped find golf balls, and I'd hit a shot every now and then or putt, but if it means spending time with my family, that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah. So are you someone that if I just start asking you your personal best, whether it's bass, crappie, different species, you got all that logged away?
Of course.
Okay, so personal best largemouth for you.
11 pounds, 2 ounces.
Caught where? So we're still keeping secrets. Okay.
No. In all seriousness, Simpson County Lake.
Okay.
South of Jackson.
So 11-pound.
Yeah, but I've been fortunate. I have caught. I think I'm up to 5 now, over 10 pounds.
Wow.
And I always said I would mount one or have it mounted for display if I caught one over 10, but I've only caught one over 11, and I didn't get it mounted. And and I don't mind telling you, all those have been at our state-owned lakes, smaller bodies of water, intensively managed. Yeah. I'm extremely partial to those lakes across the state.
Why so though? I mean, just naturally, or
yeah. Well, I could go a lot of different directions with this. Of course, right there when I went to work 25 years ago, we were fortunate to have 5 state lakes. Not counting the state park lakes. If you count those, counting Trace and Tom Bigby, there were 9 lakes that I managed, that I was over the management of. So, we really focused on ramps and piers and bank access, and we renovated some where we drained them completely, and 2 years later reopened them. It's just easier to control the environment per se, the habitat and the fish. I can control, I can manage. And I can manage the people easier on a 300-acre lake than I can a 30,000-acre reservoir.
Yeah, makes sense.
And, all the big fish that I've caught have been, I take that back. One of the 10s come out of Bay Springs.
Okay.
But the others came out of, state lakes that we manage.
Personal best smallmouth.
6 pounds, 4 ounces.
6'4".
And of course, that was at Pickwick. I have had the chance to, and the 6'4" was caught in March of 94, maybe 95. Okay. Spring break, 1/4 ounce red rattle trap.
How about that?
In Indian Creek.
In Indian Creek.
Yeah.
Okay, let me write that down.
I remember it like it was yesterday. I went completely into panic mode when that fish jumped. But it's pre-spawn, heading into the spawn, good time of year to be up there. Yeah. And we had just started fishing Pickwick. I was in grad school at Mississippi State, and we'd go rent a cabin at J.P. Coleman for 4 or 5 days, and we fished every day, can to can't.
How about that?
And caught that big smallmouth.
So March of that year.
Spring break.
Red rattle trap. You say that, okay, and immediately what comes to my mind is a fishing tournament experience that you guys make fun of me for.
Sam Rayburn, baby.
Sam Rayburn. It was in Texas in February that year, all those years ago. Okay, and the weather changed. We had warm weather practice, and then it got cold and snowed on us during the tournament, and I was miserable, ready to go home. Mm-hmm. I'm out there 9 hours from home, freezing, thinking, there are so many fish to catch at home. Yeah. Why am I here in Texas? Yeah. But the guy who wound up adjusting and moving out from the bushes and catching fish off a point was from Jackson, Mississippi, and I can't remember his name, and it's driving me crazy at this moment. But he caught his 2-day, 2 days of fish that won that tournament in Texas on a red rattle trap, fishing it slow off of a point after the weather had changed out in Texas.
In another month, I'll, probably another 3 weeks. Yeah. I'll have a lipless trap, lipless crankbait on the deck. Yeah. No matter where I'm fishing.
There you go.
It's just a great pre-spawn bait throw. Okay,
you said white perch, which is crappie. Mm-hmm. Is there a dividing line? Okay, is it I-20?
I think I would go more I-82.
82.
Highway 82.
North of that, we say crappie.
South of that's white perch. And look, when I got to Mississippi State and changed, my major and started getting into, fisheries management and doing statistics and learning ichthyology, different types of fish. People kept talking about crappie. I didn't know what they were talking about. Right. You know, that's white perch where I grew up, and there were not two species. I mean, the black-ish white perch were the male, right, and the others were the females. Well, I didn't know there was a black crappie and a white crappie. They're two separate species. So, you know, it took me, 21 years to learn that there's two different species of white perch, a black crappie and a white crappie. But I didn't know that until I got north of 82.
Yeah. So I'm going to guess here. I would guess your personal best crappie, white perch, has come somewhere Grenada.
Sardis.
Sardis.
Yeah, it's at Sardis. Yeah, and it's nothing giant. Now, hook and line, I'm pushing like 2 pounds, 11 ounces.
Okay.
I've caught a few at our state lakes that have pushed 3 pounds.
Okay.
I've never, that I can remember, broken the 3 pound barrier with hook and line. I have with the electric cricket. As much sampling as I got to do.
Yeah.
I have seen several 3 pound fish, but a 3 pound crappie is a big, huge crappie, a big one.
So let me ask you this. I've never seen one up close and personal. I will say, though, for the record, I did get to go on a TV shoot with you one time for the news station years ago.
Oh, yeah.
At Monroe County Lake to see the electroshock process. But like a largemouth bass that hits sort of a threshold, you get over 10 pounds, especially 11, 12, 13, they'll have those big bug eyes. They just almost look different.
Yeah.
Same thing for a huge crappie?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. The mouth is what gets me. A crappie over 2.5 pounds, just looking at, how broad it is and then the mouth size.
Okay.
And wildlife and fisheries management go hand in hand. What we know about fisheries management, we learn from wildlife, and what they've learned about wildlife management, they learn from fisheries. It's interchangeable. The number one key to get big crappie or trophy bass is simply age. The fish has to have age.
It's got to reach a certain age
to have the ability to get that size. That's why you see things like a 12-inch minimum on Grenadine at Sardis Archibutla is to allow those fish to reproduce a couple of times before they're vulnerable to harvest. So, certainly we've got to have forage, we got to have habitat, we got to have the genetics. But the number one thing is that fish can't go in a live well or a cooler and be taken home. That it's got to be released for it to have the ability to get to that size. And people don't realize, how long it takes. Let's say a 10-pound bass. You're talking about an 8-year-old fish. 8 years is a long time.
Right.
Especially if you're in a 120-acre lake, 110-acre lake that's getting fished a lot.
Right.
Even though it's catch and release.
It's either a smart fish or a lucky one of the other.
Exactly. and we're seeing that. There are certain things of smart fish. So, you're talking about double-digit fish, you're getting on up there. I've seen things where Texas and Florida have looked at the age of their tweeners, their 12s to 15s to 16s, and it's amazing how old those fish are.
Yeah.
And these are verified ages, and it is amazing. And but conversely, just like we do as humans, you reach a certain point in your age that your health starts declining. You start seeing that poor condition. So, over the course of my career, especially as a fisheries biologist, people would get upset and say, "Man, I caught a big had the head of a 5-pounder." I don't know how many times I've heard that.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong. Number one, the fish bit. Okay, so you caught the fish. Right. But a lot of times it's just an old fish that has been caught and released, and it is in a lot poorer condition as it's gotten older. So it's, trying to grow a trophy bass at Lake Lamar Bruce or Lake Monroe or Simpson County Lake or big crappie at Grenada that it's known for, you got to get age on those fish.
Yeah. Years ago, I would catch a fish here or there, post a picture of it, largemouth, and then you'd ask me at church or somewhere, "Where'd you catch that?" And when I told you it was at the golf course in the pond, you'd roll your eyes at me a little bit like it wasn't really fishing. and I understood that it's kind of like shooting fish in a barrel. But hey, like you said, the fish bit.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. My personal best, I couldn't weigh it.
Yeah.
The reason was I had to walk so far to get to that golf course pond. I couldn't carry all that stuff with me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he bit.
I tell you what, I've changed my tune, because now I've had, well, not recently, but a couple years ago, I had the opportunity to go do some golf course pond fishing, especially in February when there wasn't as many golfers out there.
Right.
And you get a cold, just a day that you don't want to be out, take your boat out. And so me and a buddy of mine, he invited me, hey, I'm running out here to the golf course. Let's go throw a rattle trap majig. And I'm singing a different tune. That's a whole different world of fishing right there. That was pretty easy fishing there.
Pretty easy
fishing. Yeah, I enjoyed that.
If you want to get your rod doubled over, that's a pretty quick way to
I thoroughly, you notice I haven't, you don't probably do it much anymore, but now I wouldn't say anything about it now because I've gotten to participate.
Yeah.
So.
Also I think about the tournament fishing, the bass weigh-ins, and I've always been fascinated with that ever since I was a little kid watching Bill Dance, who I know is a close personal friend of yours, right? Got his hat and his signature in your office. Speaking of him, bass weigh-ins, they're awesome. They're awesome. Somebody's up there posing with 2 5s. I mean, they got a sack of 25, 30. Look, it's awesome. When I saw pictures and video from that weigh-in at that catfish tournament in Vicksburg this past year, I think it's a 2-day event in Vicksburg.
It was,
where competitors are on the stage holding up, literally 50 and 60-pound blue cats. One guy dropped one and boom, it hit the stage. He picked it up again for the picture, I thought, now that is a spectacle right there.
Sure.
I could get into that real quick.
And I think you're seeing a movement, not as quickly as we saw with BASS back in the 70s and 80s. But you're seeing a growing interest in that trophy catfishing, particularly along the river, Tennessee, Arkansas, Mississippi, Louisiana.
Yeah.
And, number one, again, those fish are 20 plus years old. So you're dealing with a pretty special fish. And just have the opportunity to catch something that big on a rod and reel, I think you're going to see the popularity continue to rise.
I was curious about this. The live well, freshwater aeration, keep it alive, weigh it in, release that big catfish process. I understand it you can put 5 bass in a live well pretty easy. What were they doing with these catfish?
Same thing. Obviously they have, the guys that are fishing these big catfish tournaments have modified boats. To accommodate that, accommodate. Some of them may have a giant cooler that they've retrofitted with aerators.
Okay.
But they're, you're talking about weighing in one big fish and it's got to be alive. So, a lot of center console boats, a lot of these bigger, like a walleye live well that you see up north, they'll accommodate one of these giant trophy catfish.
Yeah. So, I may get a detail off, 1 or 2 here, but I'm in the ballpark.
Sure.
I remember seeing that they had some folks that were tied after, a certain, whether it was 1 day or 2 days at that tournament. And they gave them the option of like splitting the prize money.
Yeah.
Which would, for the teams, we did the math at that time, and it would have been somewhere in the neighborhood of about $9,000 per team. There was maybe 2 teams or 3 teams that were going to split, get somewhere in the neighborhood of about $9,000 each. And they voted no. We want to go out and have one winner that wins the whole purse.
Yeah.
And that's what they did. There was no such thing as splitting the So they went and had a fish off. I laughed because the Vicksburg papers, the line in the paper said they voted to fish to the death. I thought, that's overstating just a little bit. But we get it, like a sudden death deal.
Huh. Yeah. I'm not up to speed on that. So they didn't have a tiebreaker, way to tie break.
Just go back out.
So they went back out and settled it on the water.
Settled it on the water. Yeah, that was
I'll tell you that, and I'm sure you've gotten the same question in your past. You mentioned Sam Rayburn. Love tournaments.
Yeah.
I love fish tournaments. Very competitive, as you are.
Right.
That's, golf. I have different outlets. But I really thought I wanted to fish competitively. And just like you, I really had my eyes open. I was fortunate enough to have some success at the state level. And so I advanced and to the regional, and now you're talking, traveling, lake you've never been on. You got to learn the lake. You got to, do your homework.
Investment.
Yes. So I tell folks, that ask me about, well, why didn't you ever try to fish professionally? So I got there on a Sunday morning, got up early and drove, got there Sunday at lunch. So I fished Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. So, full days now. Mm-hmm. I mean, can to can't. Trying to learn as much as I could. The tournament was 3 days. So with the tournament was Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So I fished can to can't Sunday through Friday. And had found some fish. Conditions changed. I did not adapt. Mm. And it was a struggle. And I learned right quick after 5 days of practice and competition that I didn't want to fish for a living, because you've got to win money to pay the bills. And I learned right quick my inability to adapt to the changing conditions. I was not going to be able to pay my house note fishing tournaments. So I decided to stick with the natural resource career, and I haven't, still love to fish local, with a club or, small tournaments. I still enjoy that. And when I quit getting excited at blast off, when they start calling boat numbers, then I'll quit fishing tournaments. But I tell folks I never fished for a living. Fishing is my living, because essentially for 25 years, that's what it's been.
Yeah. Well, and I felt like, for me, for example, I became spoiled and I was fine with it by living in Northeast Mississippi. No kidding. I mean, like I said, it's a true thought that went through my head. I'm 9 hours from home in Texas.
Yeah.
It's February. It is sleeting and snowing on us as we try to catch bass. I'm frozen. Mm-hmm. Larry, I didn't know my non-boater very well. Yeah. And if I had known him better and trusted him fully, or knew I could, I would have said to him, here, you take the boat and fish all day. I'm getting on the bank, build a fire, and you just come back and get me before the weigh-in. Yeah. And then had the thought, there are so many fish I could catch at home within 30 miles of my house. So I was a little bit spoiled, by being there too. But I will say that experience, I thought, I'm big, tall, young, strong, tough guy. I played football. Mm-hmm. I got toughness. Let me tell you something. These tournament fishermen, especially the ones that do it a long time, that dedicate themselves and do it, they have my respect.
No kidding.
Not only the physical toughness that it takes to travel. You're fishing when it's 100. You're fishing when it's 15 degrees breaking ice all over the place. The mental toughness it takes to stick to it, to figure it out and adapt. Man, they've got my respect.
Oh, mine too. I found out real quick, I don't enjoy tournament fishing as much as I thought.
It looked more fun on TV.
It does. It does. And like I said, tournaments are still remain extremely popular. In our part of the state, seeing a lot of high school, colleges,
that's something else, isn't it?
High schools and colleges, extremely competitive, branch into those realms. And I'm just tickled for them. Yeah. And I can, provide them some advice. You better want it to go hit the road.
Well, and having a team too. Yeah. Somebody you partner up with. I think that's
share information.
Right. Yeah. Work together on it. Yep. I think it'd be so much fun.
It's amazing that I mean, you play football. Yeah. How do you have time in college to go off to Florida for a week, or not the time, but the money?
Right.
I mean, I know I spent a week in Arkansas, and hotel, gas, food, and I tried to do it as cheap as I could. And it was expensive. I can't imagine when I was in college. I didn't have miscellaneous income like that.
None. I was after college, and Roger Stegall made fun of me for making all my sandwiches and freezing them and taking them with me to Texas in a cooler. He said, man, you can't live off peanut butter sandwiches. I said, well, I'm fixing to try until I get back home. That was another thing. I was hungry by the time the week was over.
Ready to go. But, certainly excited to see, the tournament crowds, fields, formats change and continue to adapt and still see folks excited about it.
Real quick, back to the catfish thing.
Sure.
Let's just say hypothetically, if catfish tournament trails and things were to grow the way the bass thing did, let's say all those years ago, it sort of positions Mississippi because of the Mississippi River in a really good spot, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, you think the towns, right there up and down the river, Vicksburg, Greenville, Natchez, that would have the opportunity to bring these anglers in, or these trails, these big catfish trails. Even Memphis, and I say Memphis, but you got South Haven right there. To bring these trails in, bring these folks in. And when these folks come to Mississippi, come to towns, it's hotels, it's gas, it's food. It's a huge economic driver for the state of Mississippi when these tournaments, especially, bass or even these. Well, you saw, what was going on in Vicksburg.
Yes.
When these folks come to town.
Right. My mother and father-in-law, I think it's the first weigh-in they've ever been to of any kind. And they went because it's a big deal. And Bill Nance was there, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. It was a really neat thing. Yep. So from that, history and background and fisheries biologist and now deputy director here after a period of time at Mississippi Wildlife Fisheries and Parks, for you, how's the new role, relatively new, deputy director, differ? How's your life different now than it was maybe before? And kind of what that role entails for you.
Right. Obviously, I've got a lot more responsibility. I loved, and I progressed. I went from a fisheries biologist and moved up to assistant chief and learned so much, from my chief, Ron Garavelli, and before then, my assistant chief, Bubba Hubbard. So thankful for both of them that taught me so much. But I had an administrative role over the Fisheries Bureau from 2013 to 2020, and I loved it. Had a great staff. We still have a great staff in every bureau, but my focus was simply fisheries. Every day that I was at work, I woke up thinking, how could I make fishing better? How can I get more anglers fishing? How can I get kids involved? What can we do to, manage, pick a river, a state lake, a reservoir? And so, narrow focus, 74 employees, 7 programs. So it was exciting, but much easier than what I deal with now. So, in 2020, I moved in an administrative position as deputy director, and I have not only fisheries now, but our wildlife bureau, our law enforcement bureau, our museum of natural science. Those staffs or those directors answer to me, and I count on them because I can't be in the day-to-day operations like I was in fisheries. I've got to be a big picture guy. I got to be a fire putter outer. We struggle to strategically plan for the future because we're reactive instead of proactive. But that's what we're trying to get past. So, if it's, law enforcement, for example, it's, trying to hire conservation officers, trying to hire game wardens. Yeah. That's been a struggle the last couple of years. In our wildlife bureau, it's CWD. We know that's what we're going to be dealing with. And I've learned so much from our wildlife staff. It's just been amazing. So I've got the basics because, you learn something about everything. But to get into those specifics, it's been great to learn that. And then, with our museum, there were so many things I didn't know in terms of what our educators do out there, our conservation educators, the events, the things that we do at the museum. So great staff there. So marketing, oh my gosh, yeah, and I don't mind saying it. I mean, we've been talking about podcasts, for a couple of years, and finally, we're here. Yeah. We're here. We certainly have increased our presence on social media. And we've got a tremendous marketing staff compared to where we were at when I went to work. So in 25 years, we need to tell our story better, and that's why you're going to help us.
Yeah, sure.
Tell our story.
Well,
better.
And you mentioned social media, for example. I would say, as someone who I've lived in Mississippi a long time, I've been by the offices. I've been fortunate enough to meet you and the people in different places and things. But there are things that pop up on that Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks Facebook page and Twitter feed that are events going on.
Yeah.
Things, education opportunities that are being held, fishing for kids things. There are facilities that, honestly, I've lived here for over 20 years. I had no clue about.
Yeah.
And it's really because maybe I missed it or wasn't paying attention. But there are things about and involved, and connected to Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks that are tremendous things to promote and do. And I think that might even be, in terms of a department and connecting with those of us who are citizens and love the outdoors, the biggest step that we can make starting now and in the future is connecting all of that information via podcast and social media and everything else.
20 years ago, we made a list of challenges, in the Fisheries Bureau, and we talked about things like, number one, obviously, angler recruitment and retention. So we need to recruit and we need to retain. And now there's a third R, we need to reactivate. And I really get excited talking about this. That's 20 years ago, we were talking about, now fast forward 20 years, it's not anglers, it's outdoors people.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we need to recruit, retain, and reactivate people in the outdoors. But number two is public understanding of what we do, telling our story. And we've gotten so much better at that, but we've got so far to go. I keep up with us on social media, and I don't comment because I get frustrated sometimes, and because we get so many negative comments. It's something positive we're promoting, but I can't get past the negative comments. So now I just don't check the comments.
Don't read the comments.
At some point when I retire, I will reply to the negative comments to straighten them out, because most of the time it's just a total misunderstanding, or accusations that I get up. But we've come a long way in how we tell our story.
Well, and I think sometimes that's just a theory. Is you see someone who has a negative thought or opinion, maybe they've had a negative experience. You don't know. But again, back to the communication process of who you are, sometimes people don't know that they can just pick up the phone and call you.
Sure.
Or they can go to the local office and just knock on the door and go in and talk to someone.
Yeah.
Give
me a chance to explain. Give me a chance to answer that,
Sure.
But I'm not a keyboard, person or on my phone, because, in the past I have challenged someone and it didn't go well. Because I get very defensive about this agency and about how we manage our resources, and so I just found out, hey man, it's better if I don't reply, I don't get involved.
Yeah.
So,
well, and the other thing it says to me too, though, is there's passion about it.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's almost like I think about, in terms of my media career, it could be radio, anything else. Sometimes that needle will move one way or the other. It can be really positive, really negative, but at least that needle's moving.
Yeah.
And what it tells you is that even if you and I disagree on something regarding, fishing, hunting, something, you care about it, and I care about it.
Yeah.
And if we take that to the table, and I'm willing to talk to you and listen, and you're willing to talk to me and listen, we'll figure it out eventually.
20 years ago, when we started talking about challenges, I was a big proponent of public meetings. And, I just couldn't. I was young, 25 years ago, brand new biologist. And I wanted to tell people what we're doing, why we're doing it, what questions did you have. And I quickly learned, let's not have a lot of public meetings, because I don't get a lot of supporters to show up at a public meeting. Mm-hmm. All I'm going to get are the naysayers and the people that are negative, and the public meeting doesn't go well. So, I've learned over my career the best ways to communicate with folks, and I think we've come so far so quick. I'm excited about the direction we're going.
So if someone's listening to this as we wrap up, and they think, okay, well, that's me. I've never complained, whatever, but I have a question. Or I have a concern. What's your advice to them? Where do they reach out? Where do they go?
Golly, we've got so many avenues. You obviously
start at MDWFP.com.
MDWFP.com. Our phone numbers are published everywhere. You got social media. that we check every day. We're easy to get up with. We've got regional offices. Come by. You know, we recently reopened the office at Elvis Presley Lake.
Right.
So we've got that. We've got 3 other offices located throughout the state. You want to have a sit down? Come by and see us. Come here. Our doors are always open. Mm-hmm. I'd love to sit down and talk with anyone.
Yeah.
I might get a little defensive, but you know.
And we can talk fishing.
Hunting,
and how to hit a hole in one.
Why?
How many do you have?
Does that really matter?
It matters because I have none. Okay. And this is as close as I've come at the golf course near Colin Community College. Back there's a little 150-yard par 3 right behind the clubhouse coming back up the hill. And it stopped that close. That's as close as I've come. And you've got 4. And the trophy's in there to prove it. I'm impressed. I'm really genuinely impressed with it.
And look, hole in ones are extremely lucky. You know that. But I hit a stretch where, I had all 4 within, and I can't remember 4 years, 3 years. I know I made 2 within a year. Yeah. Which is extremely rare.
Do you have the record at Fulton?
No. Oh, no. No. A good friend of mine, Ricky Riley, I forget how many times he's made.
Ricky.
But he's made a lot. Well, so, I haven't had one in a long time. Okay. And I'm not complaining because I've had 4.
Well, maybe you've been busy.
I definitely don't play as much as I used to.
Right.
I'm a seasonal golfer now. Yeah. Used to it was 50 degrees and we go, but now it's gonna need to be 60 or above, and it better not be too windy.
A little more fair weather.
And because of the man we talked about earlier, Uncle Jim, I'm gonna be fishing pretty hard December through March.
Yeah.
Early April.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna be fishing a lot. The golf clubs probably won't come back out till April, May.
Okay.
June. Now, when it gets hot, I'm a golfer.
Okay.
I'm not going to do a lot of fishing.
So I've got until April to get in shape, work my swing out.
I've played with you. You can play the game. Don't listen to that.
I had one of the worst days I've ever had playing golf with you too.
It was hot that day. Yeah. It was extremely hot. I live for those days now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know why I like them now? Because my body will loosen up.
I know.
The older I get, the warmer I need it to be to do anything physical.
It's exciting. Deborah's really fell in love with the game, my wife.
Isn't that cool?
So we go and like on a Friday, we'll leave at 4:30 and go play 9 holes and go out to eat.
That's great.
That's our thing in the summer. So you need to get Annabeth to take the game up. We'll take you out with us.
Comedy. We'll get Scooter, a TV camera. You want comedy. Let's get Annabeth involved in something competitive. I've never met a person more competitive.
She don't need to be getting in golf. Man.
She doesn't need to do golf.
Deborah's competitive too, and she's really struggled because it's not come natural to her.
Right.
And
you know what I learned? In football, sometimes the madder you get, the more angry, the better you do. Mm-hmm. It's right the opposite in golf.
Exactly. I know it.
You can't mad your way around a golf course.
And I've jokingly told her, I wasn't joking. We're fortunate. I live on 5 acres, and I've got a place you can go hit wedges. Uh-huh. And so when she gets frustrated, I'll say, well, let's go across the street tomorrow and go practice. Well, she don't want to do that. That's no fun.
Yeah.
That's no fun. I said, well, that's the only way to get better is to spend time. And you know this, how many balls you hit.
Oh, yeah. Too many at times.
Exactly the mornings before you went to work. And again, to tie it back to fishing and even hunting, there's nothing like time on the water. Am I going to catch fish every time? No, I'm not. As much experience as I've had, as many people as influenced me in my fishing career, there are days of fish are not going to bite, particularly when you have a Mississippi Outdoors camera in your boat.
They know when the camera's there.
I've been fortunate to fish a lot of places on TV with our staff and Scooters. Scooter and Rusty have been great. But there are times that I can guarantee, we caught them last week. We caught them early this week. We need to go. And you put that camera in the boat. And an hour later, you're just looking at each other like, yeah, this was bad.
What's the bigger bad luck deal on a boat? A camera or a banana?
Oh, camera.
Camera, much more than
man. I don't care nothing about that banana.
I've always heard that's bad luck.
I have too. I don't pay attention to that. But you put that TV camera in the boat,
they get lockjaw.
I told somebody this weekend, we had a show air recently from Trace State Park that I loved. I loved doing it with our pastor, Matt Powell. And we had enough fish for a show in an hour.
Is that right?
And that very rarely happens.
Wow, that's great. Who found him, you or him?
Oh, no, he knew the school was there, the school of crappie.
Yeah.
And we wanted to, talk about things we've talked about. Who got you into fishing? What have you seen change the most? And we spent a couple of hours. We were done within 3 hours. And that's only happened a couple of times since I've been involved with Mississippi Outdoors TV, that we finished and gone by noon. We had a show several years ago. I even let Scooter fish. We caught so many bass.
Yeah.
With Jim.
Yeah.
We quit filming, and I said, "Here, Scooter," and he caught a nice 5-pounder.
How about that?
On camera. So, but I was telling somebody this weekend, there have been probably 5 or 6 shows for me personally, going out to film that we punted.
Yeah.
You just didn't get a show. The fish didn't bite, and we still can't control that. But you learn that time, that experience, that practice to help you make. As a good friend of ours always used to say, it's all about the decisions you make on the water.
Yep.
And practice and experience will help guide you make the best decision you can.
No question about it. That experience being something that you can't speed it up, you can't force it.
Right.
And the only way you get it is to put your time in.
That's right.
And that's kind of the fun part of it. The whole idea that the journey, there's really not some destination you're trying to get to as a fisherman. It's the journey along the way.
Yep.
That's what it is. And you've had a heck of a journey so far and continuing on as well. Larry, it's good to talk to you. Really
I've been looking forward to it. Glad we were able to finally get together.
Yep. And we're going fishing together soon.
I would love to. Hopefully May.
Okay.
Definitely need to have a camera with us when we go in May in Northeast Mississippi.
Right. All right. Sunscreen.
Looking forward to a couple of lakes that are going to be opening. Elvis Presley will be opening.
Oh, that's right.
Holmes County State Park will be reopening. So we'll have a camera.
All right.
And I've got you a spot reserved for Elvis Presley.
I'm ready.
I like it.
I'm ready to go. Thank you,
Looking
Larry.
forward to it.
That's Larry Pugh. Hope y'all enjoyed that. Deputy Director here at Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. Thanks for listening to Mississippi Outdoors Podcast. I'm Matt Wyatt. We'll see you outdoors.